Hello, lovely people. My name is Wizo from LevelUpCorner.com, and today is going to be a story video. For those of you who are new, a story video is where I regale you with a tale of my past adventures, and you get to learn something from it while being entertained. Now, today's story is going to be about high-level encounters, or about a high-level encounter that I had. In particular, I refer to it as the DBZ fight. Now, many dungeon masters have questions about high-level encounters, and that's because many dungeon masters don't reach those high-level stages. Many campaigns end far before they get to level 15, 16, etc. I've been blessed to have 3 campaigns where players got to high levels. One was where they were 16, another was they ended at 18, and another one was actually past level 20. That was little bit ridiculous in 3.5. But one thing that I found out about high-level encounters is that it's not that high-level encounters or high-level fights are absolutely terrible or designed to be terrible. It's that they amplify all the good and the bad that you have had when you were fighting in lower-level fights. What do I mean with this? Well, take this example. I got a 7. I did 4 damage. Is it dead? That's boring. That's extremely boring. Now take this. I tried to swing at it with my sword, and I rolled a 17 to hit. I did 4 damage, and then the Dungeon Master describes, well, you went to go in and strike it, but it dodged out of the way. However, your blade did catch its arm, and it's now bleeding from this area of the arm, if you can't remember or have a brain fart like I just did there. But you see the difference. You see where one scenario was just, oh, I'm going by the base mechanics and it's boring, and another one is where they try to make a decision. They try to have some agency in the fight. Well, if you don't have agency in the fight at higher levels, most dungeon masters think that, oh, I just need to stack up more health, armor, and damage on my monsters. No, you don't want to do that. That's the trap that many dungeon masters fall into to make encounters more interesting. But when you fight in a high level encounter, or when your players are a lot higher, they have all these extra tricks, and you should let them use their powers, abilities, and items that they've rightfully gained by this point. In fact, I have an article kind of describing the base reasons why high level mechanics are an issue in the corner somewhere. But on to the Dragon Ball Z fight. A little bit of backstory. The characters had to kill a demigod who was once a god. Now this god ended up killing the goddess of magic. If you are at all familiar with Forgotten Realms, you know that this era is called the Time of Troubles. However, this is the second time it's happened, and the over-god, who was in charge of all the other gods, just said, you know what? Screw it. You all have to choose champions and have them kill this murderer, the one who murdered the god of magic, or if he gets back to being a god, then he will become the god of magic, and he will pretty much own you and tell you how magic works. Murderer, get down and be immortal. So he just slaps him down to earth, and this god Cyric, who is an assassin essentially, is trying to regain his godhood. Now the party has gone through an entire campaign, this epic quest, and they've gotten to the point where they know where this demigod is. They're at a very high level, level 17 at this point, and they know that this ex-god is trying to become a god again through the remains of another god. If any of you are familiar with the Forgotten Realms, Baal, he's trying to become a god by literally taking his body and his essence and just absorbing it into himself. Now how he's doing this is he's siphoning the energy through 3 pillars. One is a pillar that emits yellow energy, another is a pillar that emits red energy, and another pillar emits blue energy. If you are familiar with Dragon Ball Super, or just Dragon Ball in general, you know that the yellow one references a different power ability, and so does red and so does blue. Now, he was being siphoned with these different pillars, and this group came to the scene, and they were going to try to stop him. But the soon-to-be god, or hopefully soon-to-be in his own opinion, was not going to just let them disrupt his plans. I mean, what evil bad guy would? Let's be honest here. He's got to have some countermeasures. And the first countermeasure that he had was that he had two elite guard demons, two higher level demons to try to fight the party. Now, the party was level 17. They had a whole bunch of extra knickknacks, and the party consisted of 4 people. One, an NPC cleric, which just shot a bow and just cast regeneration or healing on people and didn't do much else, and who was always targeted and almost always went down because everyone knew kill the healer, and they actually did try to kill the healer. There was also a barbarian who, barbarian, what else do you need to know? There was a song siren or something of the sorts. He was a bard that was able to use songs even better than most bards with his prestige class. He could choose to have different buffs at different times. For example, think of you are resistant to fire now. Now you gain damage reduction. Now you gain temporary hit points. Now everyone around me takes lightning damage, whatever else. He was that type of bard. It was actually kind of cool. And then they had an Eldritch Knight Abjurant Champion, which ended up having like 40 AC and the dual-wielding capabilities of a melee fighter. I mean, it was just a broken class all around, so that was the tank and bruiser who could do everything except heal. Now, with this party, the Abjurant Champion saw that Cyric, the god who wanted to ascend, was floating in the air and being siphoned, had energy siphoning into him from these pillars. And she just decided, I'm going to cast Fly on myself and I'm going to go and beat him. Well, she cast Fly on herself, she went, the 2 other demon guards came, and they ended up locking down the party, the other members of the party. So you had the bard, the cleric, and the barbarian on the ground trying to tussle with these 2 elite demon guards who were, by the way, summoning more and more demons. And you had this broken wizard trying to fight this demigod who is powered up beyond belief. Now, I mentioned that the demigod Cyric was in the air, being powered up and kind of had a blue aura around him. Well, he was flying, and so was this other wizard. They ended up tussling in the air by doing the typical, like, Dragon Ball clashes, pretty much, and she was, the wizard at this point, was buffed so much that there was a glow of just magic around her as well. So you had this blue light and this red light at times going and hitting each other, and she had augmented fly speed as well, so they were moving extremely fast, and it was basically like an anime fight. Sometimes the wizard would retreat a little bit, and then she would cast Isaac's Greater Missile Swarm. This was in 3.5. But she would cast this spell where it unleashed a whole bunch of extra little missiles where it's just like a bunch of little beams at him. And then he'd be able to cast a counter spell or something, or just shake it off from how powerful he was becoming. And then he'd cast his own spell at her, which is just like some blue energy pretty much that was thrown at her. It was pretty much an anime fight. And on the ground, you had the other people try to fend off these 2 demons who, as I stated, were summoning more. Now, the barbarian, when fighting them, ended up breaking some of the rocks around, and she ended up creating terrain so that the other 2 could hide behind. And this was necessary because even though the bard had improved invisibility on himself and on the cleric, the higher demons could see the bard and the cleric. So they were trying to dip and dive around rocks while possibly casting a spell to heal someone or casting a spell to aid, and the bard was trying to do this while singing a song. It was quite ridiculous how he ended up doing that because, of course, this bard had acrobatics, and at that point, if you put points into being able to jump for about 17 levels, even if you shouldn't be that great at it, he could jump from rock to rock and just dodge these little guys. I mean, it was great. Where they were trying to they were trying to have the 2 support players avoid the hordes and avoid the 2 elite guards, while the barbarian was trying desperately to get their attention and to beat them into a pulp while getting healed here and there. Now, this continued on for a few rounds, but the wizard saw that this wasn't working. She saw the DBZ little beam spells and attacks in the air just weren't doing anything because these pylons that I mentioned earlier that were jutting out from the earth were siphoning energy into him. So she tried something. She went and she ended up striking at a pylon, and it ended up dealing damage. Now, any player knows that if something is dealt damage and the Dungeon Master writes anything down, it doesn't matter if you shouldn't metagame or not, that player is going to attack that thing that is being dealt damage. So, she went and she attacked it until the demigod Sirik flew over to her, and then she just boop, boop, teleported over to another pillar and started whacking it. He'd go over, boop, boop, and it would just be this little game of cat and mouse where she was using her spells to just teleport around the field or try to push him away or do something else while she's trying to destroy these pillars. Or she would fly up high and then cast a spell at another pillar. It was ridiculously awesome. And all the while, you had terrain being destroyed by the barbarian down below, and the two supports actually supporting, while the cleric, since he's pretty much an NPC, he is always targeted in a fight, and because of that, he had part of his body ripped apart, pretty much just opened up, gashes in his leg, and he cast Regeneration on himself, so he was going through so much pain, but he was barely alive just to try to keep healing his allies and give them another round or two. It was ridiculous, and they ended up using their items in order to try to dip and dive across through the vast seas of monsters and their abilities and skills that they'd acquired to that point. Now, the point of the story, aside from it being an awesome and interesting fight and giving me an excuse to rant, is that when players get to a high level, notice how I never once stated how much damage they really did. I stated that, yes, the wizard person was kind of overpowered, but I gave statements like, your abilities don't seem to affect the demigod, as Sirik is getting stronger and stronger, and terrain was being battered and destroyed. The other two decided to try to live as best they could by dipping and diving or casting spells, even though part of their body was strewn in half. Ugh! Strewn words, English. But they ended up trying to do things and making meaningful decisions rather than focusing on rolls. Now, yes, rolls and stats are important, but when you get into a high-level fight, you need to make sure that by this point, your players, and you as the Dungeon Master, if you are the Dungeon Master listening, need to make high-level fights about the decisions you do. You should do this on lower-level encounters as well, but many times, Dungeon Masters, when they get to higher levels, just don't know what to do and can't embrace the insanity that high levels bring. They can't embrace the sheer ridiculousness of all the items, abilities, and powers that their players have at their disposal, and they try to restrict them, which is never a good thing. You don't want to try to limit them when they have this much ridiculousness. Embrace it. Embrace everything that they've gained and everything that they've learned. Let them use it. Let them have fun. And let the game be enjoyable. So when it comes to high-level encounters, think, what can I do that will let the players unleash everything they've gained? What can I do to make this encounter something special? And most of the time, at high-level encounters or high-level fights in Dungeons & Dragons, you'll find out that those fights will become like anime fights, and it will be glorious. So next time when you get to high level, maybe in a year or 2 or 3, design an encounter and let your players loose. Let them have fun and let the fights become anime. This has been Wizo, and keep rolling.